Mind-Body Connection podcast.
The body and mind.
With your host, Dr. Phil Parker. Hi, and a very warm welcome from me, your host, Dr. Phil Parker, to this Mind-Body Connection podcast. I thought I'd begin by introducing myself as I'll be guiding you through these interviews, telling you a bit about my personal story and why I've designed this podcast and what you can expect from it. So let's begin with me. I'm a PhD in the psychology of health. I am a clinical hypnotherapist, an osteopath, a coach, and I've designed something called the lightning process because of my work in the mind-body connection over the last 30 years, which is applying the science of the mind-body connection to help people make changes in their health. And I'll talk more about that, I'm sure, as we go through. So my personal story, how do I get involved in the mind-body connection, which is kind of a weird place to spend 30 years of your life? Well, it started for me when I was about 21, and I was a budding osteopath, but I also really wanted to be a rock guitarist. And at the age of 21, I severed my left hand, which is not a good deal if you want either of those careers. And I went to the surgeons and I said, look, what are my chances of recovering? And they said, you won't recover. And I was like, oh man, that's not what I want to hear. So I asked for another opinion. And the next person said, you'll be left with just a claw. You won't be able to move your hand at all. I was like, oh, this is tough. But I was kind of contrary at 21. So I kept on asking. Different expert opinions all confirm what the textbook says. You'll never recover. But eventually I found somebody who said, I think you will recover. And I clung on to that belief. I thought, well, okay, if one person thinks that, I'm gonna believe that and buy into that. And I was able to ignore all the other negative medical opinions, which were correct based on what the textbook said, and clung on to this positive belief. As a result of that, maybe, I don't know what it was, but I did a number of things, lots of work on myself. I did manage to recover completely the movement of my hand. And I saw other people had the same injury who never recovered. So for me, that started me to becoming very intrigued in what is the importance of our beliefs in health, the way we think, the way we operate our brain. What's the effect of what other people say to us, particularly what experts say or people close to us, how those things affect us, and can we learn something about how we can all use our mind-body connection? So that's kind of how I began on my journey. I'm going to be asking our interviewers what got them into this field, because it is a strange field and fascinating field to be in. One of the reasons I developed the podcast was I was talking to somebody and they said, that mind-body connection stuff is all a bunch of nonsense. And they were, I think, an associate professor somewhere. And I thought, that's just not true. There's actually loads of really great research that backs up that the mind-body connection exists. And the people doing this research are not just like flaky, bizarre scientists. They're some really straight, clever people who are incredibly well thought of in the field of research, who've found themselves coming against information that doesn't really fit with our worldview or our model, and challenging it and going, right, is there anything to this? And finding out that something's going on. There are extraordinary changes. And this is a major advance in where healthcare may well be going in the next few decades. So I'm going to be interviewing some of these researchers who have actually done this cutting-edge research to find out what's going on. What have they found? What does it feel like to experience this? What's the thing that's most challenged their worldview? What have they learned from this? What can they pass on to us? It's going to be such an interesting journey because these people, as I say, they're at the top of their game. They're some of the most well-respected scientists in the field of medicine and health. It's going to be really interesting to find out what they have to say. We're also going to be looking at how we can harness this, because this is one of the really interesting things about the mind-body connection, is that understanding it gives us an opportunity to use it. And as it's something that everybody has, it gives us a real opportunity to transform our health or the health of people that we work with if we're clinicians. It's also worth at this point just talking a little bit how we got into the mind-body connection or disconnect. Why is there an issue about the mind and body not being connected? Well, a lot of it comes from the 1600s, a guy called Rene Descartes, famous French philosopher, who was very interested in reality, what's true, what's real. And he recognized that the mind and the body were kind of made up of different substances, because you could perceive and see the body, but you couldn't really physically put your hands on the mind in the same way. So he decided they must be made of some kind of different matter or material. And this is where the original kind of mind-body connection really becomes stuck into Western thought. Interestingly, Rene was looking at trying to find the soul as well. So he wasn't completely a straight scientist. He was quite interested in more esoteric and spiritual practices. He thought, in fact, he'd found the seat of the soul, and he thought it was in the pineal gland. And he thought when the pineal gland wiggled due to the movement of spirit, that the spirit would pour out through the pineal and go into the nervous system, and that is what created movement in the body. So not everything he thought was quite as accurate as all the other things, but we've fixated on this mind-body connection for a very, very long time, and that has formed a lot of Western thought. Things are starting to change now with the new research into this whole area, and recognizing that there probably isn't the amount of disconnect that we've had all over this time. So I think you'll find it's a really fascinating journey, because one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, who would you have to be if you were into straight science to kind of look at what could be quite a controversial thing, like, the placebo effect? How do people heal themselves? What's going on when people take dummy pills or dummy medicine? That's quite an interesting area to work in. So we're going to have some fascinating conversations about the mind-body connection, but there's a good chance it may stray off into other areas, because we're going to be talking to some quite extraordinary people. So I do hope you enjoy the podcast, and look forward to seeing you on each episode. Do leave reviews on iTunes and everywhere else that you listen to this podcast. I do hope you like it, and if you have questions, please send them in to info@philparker.org so I can put them to future guests. Take care, see you guys soon, bye.